Hello and welcome to the Draft Talk podcast. We're back talking all things NFL draft, and what an episode we have for you today. Continuing our top 5 series, we've done the defensive line. Check out those episodes if you haven't already. We're going to cross the trench, or trenches, not sure, to look at the offensive line today. And because there's bound to be some crossovers, some guys who've played tackle maybe going to shift into guard and vice versa. We're going to pack two top 5s into one episode. You could call it a top 10, but no, we like to call it a top 5. We're doing 2 of them. We're going to start off with the tackles, then head to the guards and the centres. Before we do, let's introduce ourselves. I'm your host, Brian, and joining me, as ever, it's Owen and Stu. How are you doing, guys?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Brian. I think it's good to do it this way because there's a lot of crossover between the tackles and the interior this time. Normally, we like to separate them into 2 different episodes, but I think it's important to have an overall discussion. So I'm looking forward to it.
As you guys who've listened before know, offensive line is my favourite episodes to do. This year, I don't know if it is. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of good players and a lot to talk about, but consensus-wise, that might be a whole different ballgame.
There we go. Well, yeah. Owen and Stu, they've done all the research. They've looked at all the tapes, all the measurables, etc., etc. So yeah, let's get going. The guys are going to rank their top 5. Like I say, we're starting off with the tackles, or the guys we think are going to be tackles when they are drafted. I'll come to you first. Kick us off. Who's your number 5 offensive tackle, please?
Yeah, so my number 5 offensive tackle is Cameron Williams, the right tackle from Texas. And I'll be honest, I'm not particularly too happy about it. I found this tackle group very difficult to rank. I'm not overly in love with it, I'll be honest. Where I think it's important here that obviously all our listeners and watchers will, but it's important to tune into the whole episode here because there'll be some there's going to be some crossover on the interior where I think a lot of these players who are being ranked as tackles are probably better as interior players. Now, Cameron Williams, I think you could classify as one of those players, but I've stuck him at tackle because I'm quite happy to let him fail at tackle before moving him inside. That's not the same for everyone in this class. 6'5", 333 pounds. And if you were drafting a player just for the build, the athleticism, the physicality, Cameron Williams would be that because he's got an incredibly high ceiling with an outstanding combination of size and strength. He's got substantial athleticism, explosive movement out of his stance, vice-like grip strength, and he can get out to the second level. People thought that he would potentially develop into a top 15 pick in this class, and it just hasn't happened for him. And I think he would have been better served going back to school, actually. That problem lies from that he's extremely raw. He only started 1 season at Texas, and he really lacks the experience and the know-how to play that position straight away in the NFL. 13 penalties in 2024, and he just doesn't have a strong enough base for my liking. That he needs to improve his anchor, lacks anticipation, which leads to him getting beaten on an island, especially when rushers are crossing over his face. And he just lacks an overall refinement. Got heavy footwork. So he is at number 5 because I would quite happily take a chance on that ceiling at some point on day 2. But I think I would be very surprised if someone took a punt on him in round 1 at the moment. And if they do, it's because they're buying into the build. And I wouldn't expect them to be putting him on the field in week 1 in the NFL.
Yeah, Cameron Williams, as you said, Owen, he looks like an offensive tackle.
Yeah.
So
in a draft that lacks those players, he is.
He looks like one.
Yeah.
He's a really heavy-handed player. He's got long arms with really good torque. He's a really dominant run blocker. He's an aggressive style to his play. For me, there's quite a lot of inconsistencies there. His striking technique reads really kind of cleaned up. Although he's explosive, his change of direction is a bit limited for me.
Yeah, heavy.
He's difficult in matching acceleration. His kick slide technique's a little bit weird as well. He doesn't get deep into those pass sets. I think he has a really good run block and tackle. For me, I had him at number 8 in the tackles, but people are going to like him because there is that upside. He does need refinement, but there's teams who draft a year or two ahead of need that we've seen. Not everyone, but some teams do. And he's the kind of player, if you're looking at that and you've got to pick, somewhere on day 2 that you think, actually, he's someone who we could develop for a couple of years and get him ready, Cameron Williams is not a bad shout.
Yeah, he's one of those books where I think I speak for both of us here, where we really struggled to separate some of these offensive linemen, and when debating between the two, I will tend to lean towards the ceiling. Maybe this isn't the class for it, but I look at the names that I've got down the list behind him, and I don't particularly feel confident in any of them being that number 5 guy. It just isn't that type of class.
There we go. Owen's number 5. Stu, let's have yours.
I think this pick will probably reflect what Owen said about maybe being more of a floor guy. So I've gone for Wyatt Milam from West Virginia. He is someone who was a standout football and baseball player in high school. He played both sides of the ball as well, and he had offers from all the big schools, but chose to stay at home. He's a West Virginia native, and he's been there for a while now. He's someone who has a dense, sturdy build. He's got a really strong lower half. He's got sufficient mobility, but he's not the most mobile. He's got a really clean pass set technique, however. He is a quick processor. He's a really good understanding of what's going on. He gets his hips nice and low. He's got a really good knee bend. He's not a waist bender like some of these other guys might be, and he gets his pads at a good level. I think movement is maybe the thing for him. He's a little bit stiff at times. Against those faster pass rushes you get on his outside, his footwork can leave a little bit, but I think he's solid. He's played at left tackle. The majority of us played at right tackle. I think he is sufficient in all areas without having that standout trait. And again, in a draft class where who knows what's going to happen with these tackles, I think he's somebody who's maybe just a safer pair of hands. Some people will rank him as a guard, or I might have done so moving forward. I don't know. We've not seen each other's rankings, but I think he's worth a shot at tackle because he knows what he's doing at that position.
Yeah, he's my number 6 guard.
Yeah, there you go. It's absolute mayhem.
That's why it was important for us to do them the two together. I have him ranked as an interior player. First of all, because of the lack of quickness, the lack of explosiveness he has, but secondly, he has sub 33-inch arm length, and I think that shows up on tape. That he doesn't have the arm length that you would expect an offensive tackle to have. I've got the senior ball measurements here: 32 and 5/8, so almost at 33. Big hands though. But yeah, I think he's a solid player, and I would more than happy to slot him in as guard. He hasn't played on the interior, but I think given his overall skill set, and I think that's where he'll end up. 6'6", 350 pounds, so tall for an interior player, but his heavy hands. I think he'll do really well in kind of play action schemes where he'll be able to, even though he's not explosive out of the snap, he's kind of got this mauler mentality where he'll be able to get out and as a lead blocker if needed be from the inside. He's just a little bit tight with his quickness, but I echo everything you said there, that I think his ability to play with spacing, his disruptive hands, and his athleticism is solid. He just isn't quick out of the stance.
Yeah.
But I would, as a round 2 player, I'm more than happy. I really, speaking of being interior player 6 isn't a bad thing, because I really like the interior class. It's the tackle class that I have the problem with.
There we go. Stu, we'll have your number 4, please.
Yeah, so my number 4 is probably one of the bigger names that we've seen, and it's Kelvin Banks Jr. From the Texas Longhorns. He was initially someone who committed to Oregon and then went to Texas, but he's been a left tackle there since his true freshman season. He started a lot of games. 6'4", 320 pounds thereabouts, so he's the right size for a tackle. I think he's someone who's athletic and agile out of his stance. He's patient when connecting his blocks. He's consistent at the point of attack. He's comfortable about speed rushes. He's movements enough to do that, and he doesn't lose the arc particularly a lot. He's able to cover that pretty well. For me, the kind of things that let him down, his grip strength can be a little bit erratic. He sometimes tends to overextend himself in pass protection. His striking is a bit irregular with his hand, and he tends to kind of lean and latch towards people. His balance issues are there to be seen as well. He needs to improve his discipline and his technique for me. 12 penalties over the last 2 years as well is not inconsiderable, and just not a finished product as yet. There's still refinement to come with Banks. I think he probably will go reasonably high if people are looking at that offensive line. But for me, he's the fourth tackle for me.
He is for me too. Yeah, I have him as tackle 4. But he's another one that I'd be more than happy to play at guard, and I think I actually prefer him as a guard. But again, he's one here that I would happily let him fail at tackle before moving him inside, and that's because I think the problems with Banks don't necessarily stem from his length issues. He doesn't have to move inside because of that, but I think given his deficiencies, he could be better off inside, because I really didn't like his footwork. I found his footwork extremely clunky, and I think you could minimise that clunky footwork by moving him inside. So yeah, I'm happy.
Not much space to work.
Yeah, I'm happy for him to let him fail at tackle. That's why he's here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be ranking any tackles at all. I've been moving them all over. But I think he's a good enough athlete, but he also whiffs in the run game. That his lack of it isn't the lack of length in his game.
It's direction.
It's change of direction, and it's inconsistencies in his playing style that makes me think that he might be better off as a guard eventually. 6'4", 325 pounds. He loses leverage far too much in the run game. That he's got the long arms, but sometimes it just doesn't get near rushers.
I think as he stops and tries to lean, he doesn't take that. He could be doing taking that extra step. I think.
Yeah,
he's not leaning so much.
Yeah, and the footwork crossover as well, which means he doesn't always play heads up, which always bugs me with offensive linemen, that you need to play with your head up, and that doesn't always happen with Banks because his feet cross, and there's no consistency or refinement to his footwork. But the positives for him, that his hands, I think, in pass protection are refined enough. I like what he can do in pass protection with his hands, but I have a real problem with what he can do in the run game, which is why I have him at 4. I wouldn't be taking him in the first 20 picks, but I think he might end up going there.
Lovely stuff. And your number 3, please.
My number 3 is Josh Conerly from Oregon. He's the Ducks' left tackle. Quite an underrated prospect, I think, so far. I really like Josh Conerly. He's quietly gone under the radar so far in this draft cycle. But I think he possesses the agility, the athleticism, and the fluid footwork that the others have lacked in this class so far. And he's got a strong enough anchor and really good hand usage. He's more of a refined athlete compared to some of them. That he's a really good athlete. He's quick out of his stance, really fluid movements. His kick slides absolutely much better than anything else we've discussed so far in this episode. They're long, they're secure. He's strong enough. The quick footwork lets him get into his stride in the run game, but also he can set his base well enough when he's in pass protection. Shows good recovery as well. His negatives, it's his play strength that stops him from being higher on this. So he's more of that athletic guy than a strong anchor. He's 6'4", 315. But that lack of play strength does show up. But I think he could get there, and I think he's one of the better tackles in this class, and I would have a first-round grade on him. I really like Josh Conerly.
Yeah, so he's a really young prospect as well. He won't turn 22 till in season.
Yeah, and he's had 28 starts at left tackle.
Yeah,
at that age.
He's also played as a running back in his younger days as well, which is unusual for a lad his size. Basketball background as well. You see with a lot of these guys. For me, he's got the right size. He's got the right frame. He's got really good foot speed and lateral movement. You don't see him gassed a lot, like some of these other offensive linemen. He's got that conditioning. He's really good pass protector, I think. He's got good hip mobility and fluid movement, good body control. He's strong enough and he's athletic enough. I think he needs to improve his anchor, particularly against power rushes, against that bull rush. And in the run game, he's fine. I think what made me think a bit funny about his run game was when he seemed more happy in the run game than he did in the screens. You know, the Oregon threw a lot of screens. He didn't seem quite as confident. I don't know what it was, but there's room to work there. I also have him at 3.
Okay. Yeah. I think his issues stem from, even though 315, he's not light, but it's almost like
a lean frame.
lack of lower half mass, or if that's the better way of saying it, that it means that he plays like he has a light frame when he doesn't.
But yeah, no, I really like him as well. I think he's totally ignore that Senior Bowl clip. It's a one-off clip. If you're watching that, just ignore that when he got absolutely obliterated. It's a one-off in a drill. But people have said, "Oh, look at him getting smashed." Don't read much into that. It's a one-on-one drill. But I know it's taken a lot of media attention. But I really like Josh Conerly as well.
We spoke about that on the Edge episode. It was Mike Green you went up against, wasn't it? That, you know, he's never played right tackle. He's lining up as a right tackle in a rep. He's meant to lose one-on-one. So yeah, I would just disregard it entirely.
Put it in the bin.
Yes.
Draft there.
Oh, the bins come back out. We've not had that out in a while.
Lovely stuff. Okay, we've had the same number 3, the same number 4. Will we have the same 2 and 1? Let's find out. Owen, who's your number?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
I'm almost certain of it. My number 2 is Josh Simmons from Ohio State. He was on track to be the top ranked offensive tackle in this class until he suffered an ACL tear against Oregon in October. But he didn't allow a pressure in those 6 starts this season. San Diego State transfer, started 13 games at right tackle for them before moving to Ohio State and started 18 at left tackle. So he does have that versatility. 6'5", 310 pounds, so slightly lighter than Conerly, but I don't have the same concerns over play strength at all. I think he is an elite athlete. I think he's flexible. He's got the bend to stop rushers from turning the edge. Doesn't get caught flat-footed, is able to work on his own on an island, regardless of the help inside. And there was some pretty good help on the interior from Donovan Jackson. Really good quickness, really good anchor, really good strength, closes space, has the length as well. His negatives, I don't think his strength overly translates in the run game, but where I don't think he's as forceful and maybe as much of a finisher as I would like. But other than that, I don't really have any concerns about Josh Simmons other than the injury.
Yeah, he's someone you've kind of covered it pretty well, Owen. There, he's a really athletic. He's got really good lateral movement. His foot speed is up there with the best of them. His spatial awareness is really good as well. He understands what's going on around him. He's got a natural bend as well. He's not someone who's stiff. He's shown that versatility of playing right side, left side. He's quite refined as well with his movements. For someone who he's played a reasonable amount of football.
Yeah.
But the only
31 career starts.
Yeah. Penalties is a big one. He had 25 penalties over the last 2 seasons, so that is something that he's probably got to. That's clean as San Diego in his full season at Ohio, so he probably has to clean that up a little bit.
It doesn't include those 6 games.
The 6 games. Yeah. His injury, they need to know what that's going to be. That's not something we're going to know, and the combine and all these other kind of things is going to help with that. The only thing I really saw, he probably needs to develop a bit more of a nasty streak.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, he wants to finish people. And sometimes when someone was coming from a really wide lineman, those wide nines, they got into his chest a little bit. But other than that, I think he's a really good tackle prospect. And if he hadn't had that injury with the season that Ohio State were having, he was probably going to be higher up. I think he's just been cut short a little bit.
Yeah, almost like an injury tax on this, I think, because I don't think there would have been much competition. He would have been far out by November. He would have been crowned the OT1 in this class because he was doing so well. But yeah, those injury concerns, he required surgery, so that's cast a shadow over kind of the expectations of the season. But you would expect him to be able to come back from an ACL tear. It's just a matter of how long that recovery will take and the medical evaluations at the combine.
Indeed. Well, there we go. We know we've got the same number one, right?
Yep.
Stu, I'll let you start.
I hate that this player is my number one because it looks like I'm a bit of bandwagon jumping.
Yeah.
I've loved him for absolutely ages, and I've not really said very much about him. But Armand Membou from Missouri, he has been a really good player, particularly this last year. 6'3", 325 pounds. He just made that 34-inch arms and no more. Be someone who's got a really low body fat percentage. He's muscular and a compact player. Some people do think he is somebody who could play on the interior as well. At the college level, he's obviously played in the SEC. He's played a lot of the big guns and in that conference and done really well. I think he's a prolific run blocker. He's excellent in zone blocking. He's able to displace and finish defenders. We talked about Josh Simmons not finishing. Membou is a finisher. He's got really good quick feet, good body control. He's smooth in directional changes. He's got strong initial punch as well. He really stuns defenders in the tracks. He manages pass rushes effectively, generally with a combination of different styles. He's got a good burst off the line. He is a little bit below the average height for a tackle at 6'3". He can be a little bit over aggressive at times, trying to completely stop a play. It can lead to him missing for that reasons. But I think a very clean prospect, and for me, he was quite clearly the number one.
Yeah, he's my number one. I thought about it with Josh Simmons, but it was close enough for me to put Membou above him because of the injury. Yeah, I think you're still going to see people think he's an interior player. Mm-hmm. But I think given the measurables that we have, then I'm perfectly happy playing him at tackle. But it's good to know you have that versatility to move inside. So I'm thinking, I love his fit with the Miami Dolphins because I think you do that. You can play him at right tackle. You can move Jackson inside, or if that doesn't work, you can just switch it around.
Yeah,
you're able to do that. I'm not concerned about the height at all. I would much rather him be 6'3" than 6'6". I like his ability to get underneath the pads. There's a lot of tall tackles in this class. That 6'7", 6'8". Going down the list, I've got top 17. 6 of them are 6'7" or above. So there's a lot of tall tackles in this class. He's not one of them, but I like that. I'd much rather him be smaller, be able to create that leverage from the ground. He is. I don't have much to add in terms of the scouting report there because I think you covered it really well. I found him. He could lean a little bit, where you call it getting over the skis, if you like, which cause him. Which I think is why some people think he might be an interior player, but he will be a right tackle. That he's a right tackle.
His skill set just fits.
Yeah, he was a right tackle at Missouri. Don't believe he's played left tackle. So I would bear in mind when you see him in mock drafts go into teams, he almost certainly will be a right tackle, especially early in his career.
And we've seen that trend more recently as well. Right tackles getting drafted higher. Haven't we? Yeah. It used to always be the guys on the left-hand side, but recently just thinking Darnell Mooney. No, Darnell, not Mooney. That's the wrong Darnell. Right. Bears, Darnell Wright. And Fuanga as well. They'd all played right tackle and hasn't affected their draft stock whatsoever, playing on that right side now. So for me, I was quite comfortable having him as my number one. I've liked him for quite a lot of this season.
Combination of power, strength, speed. He's got all the intangibles, and he's got the tape to go with it. And then the bits that make him seem a little bit vulnerable, which is kind of his punch placements into the chest with rushers, a little bit of impatience, which means he can lean forward. I think if NFL teams have a problem with that, then they could move him inside, and they wouldn't mind at all.
I only wish I put his name out earlier, like I did with Faga last year, because I've liked him for a long time, and it seems like he's a trendy pick now.
Yeah.
No, you're on him from the start, Stu. I believe you, mate. Well, there we go. There's our top fives, but you've already mentioned a few sort of extra ones, your 6 and 7s and stuff. A few more names we need to keep an eye out for, guys.
I had a couple of guys who just missed out the cut, but I wouldn't have had great confidence putting them in the top 5 anyway.
Yeah.
You talked about really tall prospects. Ozzy Trapillo from Boston College. He's one of those 6'8" guys. He's a really more slender tackle.
6'8", 308 pounds. He's lanky.
But he's got really good pass protection skills. Yeah. He helps maintain the pocket really well. He shows, a lot of potential. I think he's got good flexibility, and he's definitely a true tackle prospect. He just needs to be a bit more decisive in that run game. But if I really liked his passing sets for someone of his size. He moved really quite well. And another one who a lot of people have talked about, but I wasn't really over enamored, was Ariante Ursary. Don't know what your thoughts were on how.
I would have had him at 6, but
I'm
not a fan particularly.
I think he's really heavy-footed.
He's another one who might be better
clumpy.
As a guard.
For me, he just feels
too
clumpy. He's tall, 6'6". He really struggled with speed, but he didn't get down very low, and his hand timing was not amazing. He was somebody who you're seeing sometimes in the late and first round for some people's mocks, and I thought he was a bit off it for me.
Yeah, I think if you just graded his tape running downs, I can see what there is to like, because he is extremely strong. But his deficiencies show up more so against the pass, where he's too heavy-footed and he doesn't have the substantial athleticism to kick out. So I think if you were a team who only ran the ball, then I can see how that works. But I would, I struggle to see how we could start early, because of the passing deficiencies. That he's just, even though he's got really good strength, that he just doesn't have he's just too stiff of an athlete.
Good stuff. And just looking back at last year's class, 7 tackles went in the first round. Last year, not as many this year. What do you reckon?
I would be comfortable enough with 4.
Mm-hmm.
Of the guys, probably our top 4 are probably going to be first rounders. Anything after that, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
unless
there's going to be players that we speak about in the interior that will go in the first round. So it just depends on the classification for each team, and I do think each team will classify these players differently.
There we go. Well, before we go on to the interior, remind everybody of your top 5, please, guys.
Yeah, so I had Wyatt Milam at 5, Kelvin Banks Jr. of Texas at 4, Josh Conerly of Oregon at 3, Josh Simmons of Ohio State at 2, and Armand Membou of Missouri at 1.
Yeah, we were very much aligned on this. So I had Cameron Williams, the right tackle from Texas, at 5, and otherwise the same: Kelvin Banks, Josh Conerly, Josh Simmons, and Armand Membou.
Well, there we go. And usually I'd try and come up with some witty outro, but I don't need to, because the fun doesn't stop. We're going straight onto the interior prospects, the interior top 5 for this year's draft. And Stu, no rest for the wicked. I'm going to come to you. You're number 5, please.
I think this is where it could get messy.
Could get very, very messy.
A little bit.
So my number 5 is someone who hasn't played as a tackle, and is Tate Ratledge from the Georgia Bulldogs. He is someone who also played at the other side of the ball and also a punter in high school. Has played a bit of track and did a bit of track and field and basketball as well. So he is a taller guard prospect. He's 6'6", about 320 pounds. 3-year starter for Georgia Bulldogs. He's a thick-framed build, strong upper body, strong hands. He creates a space effectively using that upper body strength. He's got quite good foot speed and able to mirror opponents. Handles well the double teams if he has to. He maintains good balance. He's got a good ability to run through contact as a drive blocker, an adequate anchor as well. He had missed some time in 2021. He had a Lisfranc injury in his foot. He's had a couple of other injuries as well to the lower body. He does sometimes struggle against more dynamic athletes, I think. And he can be a bit vulnerable to those kind of defensive tackles who are true penetrators. But he also has an awesome mullet and mustache. So yeah, I quite like Tate Ratledge. I thought he was a really good kind of clean, true guard, if you like.
Yeah, high floor player that you'd be happy taking somewhere on day 2 and starting right away at right guard. I have him ranked at 10, but I don't particularly see much deficiencies in his game. It's just that I like these interior players. But in terms of pure guards, without taking out the converts from tackle, he's one of the better pure interior offensive linemen in this class. When you separate it out like that, I think he'll be an instant starter, efficient in both pass protection and run blocking. I think he's well equipped to start at the NFL level as a rookie. I really liked Tate Ratledge as well, but I did have him further down.
Nice. Stu, come back to you. You're number 4, please.
Have you missed out Owen's 5?
Yeah, but you'll see. There's
don't question the boss.
Don't question the boss.
You agree about
That's
it.
the second time in this series he's questioned you, Brian. I wouldn't be standing for it.
I
know. Just going to take that one on the chin for now. This one for me is somebody who might not be on many, if any, radars. He is somebody that is one of the guys I'll bang the table for a little bit. And it's Cincinnati Bearcats' Luke Kandra. He is a 6'4", 323-pound player. He played first 3 seasons at Louisville before coming back to his home state to play for the Bearcats. Excellent run blocker. He wins consistently and creates lanes. He's somebody who is a high motor player, maintains effort through all downs. He's strong in pass protection as well. He can play left guard, right guard. I think he could play center if he needed to as well. He's got a really high football IQ. He diagnoses things pre-snap, stunts, twists, various things. He can pick up free rushers really well. He's got his head on a swivel looking for that. He's really a clean technician as well. He successfully engages tackles early and stops them in the tracks. He's versatile, durable, and I think he's somebody who's really coachable. Maybe struggles a little bit against the bull rush and his anchor, and he maybe doesn't have as much raw power as some of his peers, but his play strength and athletic ability, I really love him. I think he is somebody who maybe has gone a little bit under the radar in these guard positions.
I'm not going to pretend that I can add to that. I do not have a full evaluation on Kandra. He is a pure guard prospect. And if you looked at players who have played pure guard, he'd probably be in the top 10. But I'm not going to pretend that I've watched him as in depth as you have, and that's on me. And he'll be on the list because if, as a offensive line expert, if you endorse him, then that means that he's got some good tape. So I'm going to have to watch him. But I will not pretend that I can go with that as in depth as you there.
I saw him in the flesh and was really impressed as well when I was over. That was a game, and I thought, who is that guy? Because he was a standout for me. He was. I thought that player in the middle of their offensive line, the Bearcat. He is the best player on the field by a mile. And there was not that there was huge big names in that game, and I thought, right, I'm going to have to dive into him a little bit more. And yeah, I'm maybe banging the table a little bit more for him than others, but I really like Luke Kandra, and I would have no problem plug and play, let him get on with it.
Nice, high praise. Now, if it's all right with Stu, I'm going to have your number 5 now, please.
Yeah,
You can.
go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
My number 5 is Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. I think he could genuinely play all 5 spots on the offensive line if you need to. He was one of the top players at the Senior Bowl. He just lacks some arm length, which I think will see him kick inside. His arm length was 32.25 inches, so that screams guard prospect to me. 6'5", 316 pounds, has played all 5 spots for the Bison. Really thick, impressive lower half, and gets under the pads, and plays smaller than his height. He really does get low, and he can convert that power, and he can generate the movement and the displacement of defensive tackles and edge rushers. When kicking out, he can climb to the second level, take on combinations. He's a firm puncher. He's a real boxer in terms of his hand placement, and he can chase after loopers. He'll pick up blitzers as well if you need him to. I think he is a sneaky first round caliber player that I think you'll start to see him appearing in mock drafts because of his fluid movement and because of that strength in his anchor. His deficiencies come from his arm length, which I think will be solved by moving him inside. And I don't think he protected the outside shoulder so much playing tackle. But again, I think we can solve that by playing the guard. So I really like Gray Zabel. I think back half of the first, 25 and over, I certainly think he'll be an early round 2 player at worst.
He's got a really strong lower body, and he sinks really, really low. He's bent at the knees and at the hips. He doesn't just bend over with that waist, and he's able to then push through and generate a lot of power. He's really gritty, a tough, one of those kind of play through the whistle kind of guys.
Mm-hmm.
He's effective when he climbs as well up to that second level. He can take on quicker running backs. He frames his body really well to block that off. His hand placement can do a bit of work, but again, he's still a young player. He has played at the FCS level, which is maybe, but we've seen guys come in, particularly in the O-line, and that's not been a problem for them. He's got
especially
really good,
at North Dakota State.
He's got really good functional strength. He's obviously gained a lot of weight from when he to play up at that weight, but he hasn't lost athleticism. As well. He's really reactive, good strength. I like him even more than you. I have him at 3.
And the concerns of the level of competition, I think you put them to bed at the Senior Bowl. Yeah. You can't. You'll go, he's fine at the Senior Bowl, and that was it. But I think he showed enough that he was one of the best players there.
We've seen that a few times from these North Dakota State offensive linemen. They have a good production line there. I have no real concerns about him coming from that level, to be honest. Yeah, I really liked him. As I said, he's number 3 on my interior guy list.
Nice. Your number 4, please.
Yeah, so I have a tackle convert at number 4, and that's Jonah Savanaia from Arizona. He's got the frame to play tackle, and I wouldn't necessarily hate it, but if it looks like a guard, acts like a guard, he's probably a guard, which is why I've got him on the interior list. He lacks some athleticism, which I think means he would struggle at tackle in the NFL, where he can get caught on the outside. He's really stiff-hipped, which I think suits the interior as well. But other than that, he's got a good thick frame, 34.5-inch arms, so long as well, and is able to use them to his advantage. Really jarring hands, strong to displace. His deficiencies, however, come from that mobility, which I think we can fix. Really good spatial awareness, good timing, rhythm, plays. He's one of the best players on the Arizona team, which is why I wouldn't mind playing him at guard. But ultimately, I think he is better. I'll play him at tackle, but I do think he's better moving to guard, just because I can't get away from the below average athleticism.
Yeah, I didn't rank him as an interior guy, but I can see why you did.
Yeah.
He's just verging on that tall, for a guard, but we are seeing bigger guard players coming in now as well. Guys who have done really well moving that inside. I find he's a behemoth. He's really strong.
Yeah.
Heavy, well anchored guy.
It's 339 pounds.
Yeah. I think his balance isn't the greatest, and you do sometimes find that he can, as I say, bends at the waist a little bit, which is something I hate seeing an offensive lineman, and I think he's just a little bit inconsistent. I did have him ranked in my tackle, so I haven't ranked him in the interior guys, but I could see the skill set of why some people will want to move him inside as well.
Yeah, I really like him overall as a player. I'm obviously more than you do, Stu, and I think that moving to the interior just would suit him well moving forward. Just his ability to create leverage. He won't necessarily have the crosses, which means he doesn't have to take on the combo blocks outside where he's got two players attacking each shoulder, and he just has to pick one that he'll be much better suited having someone protecting that for him on the outside. So I think as a guard prospect, I think he could be a really good NFL player.
Nice. Again, Owain, you're number 3.
Number 3 for me is Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. And I was really torn here because it feels low, because I really like Donovan Jackson. I would have him as one of the top 32 players in this class. What I really like about him is that once Josh Simmons got injured, he moved out and played left tackle. And I tell you what, if he had only played left tackle, I would have had him in the top 5 tackle prospects, because his film at tackle was insane. Thinking that he just moved out there. Well, all along, Ohio State might have had 2 left tackles, but for this purpose, I think we're better off ranking him as a guard. But it's good to have that versus the outside, thinking like Vera Tucker at the Jets, those type of players who have the ability who are interior players but can kick out when needed, and that's coveted by the NFL. But yeah, I think he is one of the top interior offensive linemen in this class, and he's put together a strong, complete career at Ohio State. Really intelligent, explosive, aggressive, really strong. More than enough athleticism to cope. So he coped more than well enough at tackle. Play strength is his calling card. He's got really his feet are like roots, but they're not heavy. But once he's in passing sets, you're not going to budge him off his stance. Doesn't matter how good of a bull rush you've got, you're not going to move him. Negatives, which is why he's probably a guard, is that his footwork isn't heavy, but it's maybe not the quickest in the run game. And I think that we know, because we've seen it so much at the highest level with the Buckeyes, that he can cope with that. So yeah, I really like Donovan Jackson. I feel bad having him at 3 because I do really like him, but there's some outstanding players still left to talk about.
I wouldn't feel bad about having him at 3 because I have him at 6.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Surprised.
Yeah. I'm not so sold.
Okay.
I'm not as sold. And I think if we're looking at his guard play, if we take the tackle play out, I don't think he's going to play as a tackle.
No.
He's going to play there. If you take his guard play, for me, I think, I don't know, has how good he's been at tackle clouded what people think of him as a prospect? Maybe. For me, I think he's really broad, stout build. He's got good lower body strength. He's reasonable lateral movement. I think, for me, his footwork is. I think he does seem heavy at times.
Okay.
I think he tendency to overcommit, and he leaves his kind of far hand a bit exposed at times. I think he's more reactionary than anticipatory. He waits for things to happen before he decides what he's going to do, which sometimes you have to. But I don't think he can see things happening around him, and is I'm just not quite there on him yet. I think that there's things that just annoy me about his play more than anything, and I couldn't get off that. But the footwork for me was the one that kind of let him down a bit. I had him at 6, but I can see why people like him as well. There is a lot of good things, and there's a lot of good interior offensive linemen about in this draft. Indeed,
there is. Stu, we'll come back to you. It's been a while. For you to go first. Give us your number 2, please.
So this guy is a interior guy, and has played. Tyler Booker, from Alabama. He's 6'5", 325 pounds. He has played almost exclusively at left guard. He's played a little bit at right guard, and I think he had I think it was less than a full game at left tackle a little while ago. But he's somebody who's a large, wide build. He is a space eater, in that sense. He's got really good displacement skills at the line of scrimmage. He is going to move people around. He's got a powerful punch ability and pass protection. He can generate torque. He's got a really good strong anchor. As he plays intelligently, he's effective when he pulls in short distances. You don't want this guy pulling and running half the length of the pitch, however some of the other guards can do. He's just got that high baseline performance. I think he, with the new scheme, is increased his penalties a little bit this year, and he does have a bit of limited versatility. We've seen him in some mock drafts go as high as top 10. I wouldn't necessarily say I would have him in the top 10, but I think for cleanness of a prospect, he's right up there. And I think he probably could be a day 1 pick.
Yeah, there's not many negatives to his game. I also have him at 2. I think he has underrated bursts. He is a sudden mover. And when Alabama rave about his leadership, you know that there's a decent player there. I'll be honest, I was close between him and Donovan Jackson because of how much I like Donovan Jackson, but I prefer the ceiling of Donovan Jackson. But for what Tyler Booker can give you as a floor, he is just a hulking player at 6'5", 325 pounds. Gets low to create leverage, really good lower body strength. And I do think that his explosive movement is underrated, especially when he's going to be going up against interior defensive linemen in the NFL. So yeah, I like Tyler Booker. It certainly seems like he's going to be a first-round pick at this point.
There's a lot of momentum there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Oh, and I'll let you give us a number 1, please.
Yeah. It's Will Campbell from LSU. I'm presuming you have the same here, Stu. Yeah. Look, some people are going to have him as the number 1 tackle, and I understand why. For me, I think he is the best offensive lineman in the class.
That's exactly what I've got written down.
I think he is an interior player rather than a tackle, because the bad plays for Campbell almost always happen because of a lack of length. It causes him to have this really weird stance where against bendy and flexible rushers, he's left reaching with his hands. He's just, because he's so tall and he stands upright a lot in his stance, he doesn't necessarily have the lower body flexibility to match up with them. And then he doesn't have the arm length to compensate for that. And look, he's been one of the top offensive linemen, top tackles in college football for the last 2 seasons, and he'll enter the NFL as a top 20 pick and as a starter in his rookie season. Look, he may well start a tackle in his rookie season. It's just where we project him going forward. But excellent balance, really good play strength, fluid movement. We know that he's got really good leadership because LSU given captain responsibility on the offensive line. It's just his negatives, I think, are offset by a move inside, and that is this really weird stance, which I think he has to do to negate for the lack of length. But other than that, Will Campbell is a very polished prospect.
Yeah, the intangibles, you talk about that leadership. He was given the LSU number 7 jersey, which is the most something playmaker, I think it is, but he couldn't wear it being an offensive tackle, so he had a patch with number 7 on his jersey. I think he's going to be the Peter Skoronski of this draft, that he's played as tackle. Teams are going to draft him and stick him inside and forget about that position. He's got really fluid movement skills. He's good bend. He's got really good hands. He was calling out plays on the defensive side from a left tackle position, which is not easy to do. So moving him inside, I think he's going to be even better at that. When the view of the field is slightly different. Really refined, knows what he's doing. Teams are going to put him on their offensive line and forget about it for the next few years. But just being out on that island, I think, as you mentioned about his stance, is he going to struggle if he's put out there? Possibly. Some teams might just put him out there because that they get the 5 best offensive linemen and he happens to be at tackle. Yeah. But I think if they stick him on the interior, he has a career path where he could be an all-pro at that position. I don't have the same feels about that at tackle for him. If I was going to score him in my tackles, he would have been 4th or 5th.
Yeah, he would have been 4th. I would have had him ahead of Banks.
He was kind of in that range for me. It was a toss up between the two, but yeah, he would have been in the top 5. But I thought, you want to give him his props, really, because he is that good a player. But on the interior side,
there we have it. Well, you mentioned a few there, guys, but anyone else you want to drop out there?
Yeah, it's a really long list of really good interior players. Marcus Umbo is a tackle who's probably going to play centre at the next level. I would have had him at 7. We spoke about Wyatt Milam. I would have had him at 6. 6'4", 309 pounds, 33-inch arms, but looks like he will be a centre. Anthony Belton, I really like. He's not being talked about enough for my liking. He's 6'6", 336 pounds, but he's technically sound. Again, he's a tackle that will move inside. We're saying that an awful lot, and that's just the nature of this offensive line class. But I think he might be one that sticks out a tackle, but I would grade him as a guard, just because of it. He's got a lack of ideal length. I don't have a arm measurement on him, but they're going to be below average. Emory Jones from LSU is a player who came in hot in the summer. People thought he had the chance to be the top tackle prospect. He's emerged as interior 9 for me. He just hasn't. It seems to have certainly lost momentum. His arms are longer than we expected them to be, but his lack of play strength means he can't really be graded any higher than that for me.
We haven't really kind of covered any centres in this as well. True centres, probably the one.
Umbo, probably.
Yeah, and Jake Majors is probably the only other one I think that deserves a mention. He's somebody who's a real nasty kind of stonewaller, a road grader in the run game. There's not. We've had a couple of good centre prospects recently. There's nobody who's a true played centre all the time that kind of leaps out the. I think we've probably covered most of the people over the 2 kind of position groups that are going to be that top end guys.
I would just mention with centre, it's definitely down your, but I wouldn't rule out Jared Wilson from Georgia going highly. He's kind of an high upside starter, but he is raw. Only started 1 year at 1 year at centre for Georgia.
Yeah, he's just going to refine in his technique. Really, I think it's for him with that. You see just that lack of.
He's fluid, but raw. Jonah Monheim from USC. We'll get some looks probably early on day 3 as well. But yeah, I don't love the centre class, but there's some awfully good guys. Can we just mention Willie Lampkin from North Carolina? What a guy this is! That he was absolute bulldog at the Senior Bowl. He's 5'10", 270 pounds, and he's stonewalling Deon Walker, who's like 80 pounds heavier than him. Deon Walker cannot get anywhere near him.
He could get underneath Deon Walker because he's so small and so low. Deon Walker plays so high. He just, I've got you. You could not go anywhere.
Yeah, Deon Walker's got 8 inches and almost 80 pounds on Willie Lampkin, and Lampkin was, and to be fair, it shows up. He has to be scrappy because of his size. Unfortunately, he hasn't been invited to the combine, which probably tells us the direction the NFL's heading with his evaluation, especially because of the size. But I just wanted to give him a shout. Go and watch North Carolina play and look for Willie Lampkin on the interior, because what a fun player he is to watch. It's just proper scrappy ankle biter, I think is the best way to describe him.
And he's probably not reaching the ankles in some of these guys at 5'11" either, and well under 300 pounds. He is small, but
get him playing fullback, and why not? Undrafted free agent fullback.
Do you know what? Convert him to the other side of the ball if he's that scrappy. 290-pound defensive tackle, he will fight. He's happy to take on all comers. But I like that mention.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, guys. Before we go, quickly remind them of your top 5 interior linemen, please.
Yes, mine was at number 5 was Tate Ratledge. At number 4 was Cincinnati Bearcats' Luke Kandra. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State at 3. Tyler Booker of Alabama at 2. And LSU's Will Campbell at number 1.
I had Gray Zabel at 5. Jonas Savanair at 4. 3 was Donovan Jackson. 2 was Tyler Booker. And 1 was also Will Campbell.
Lovely stuff. Well, there we go. A bumper double top 5 for you there. Defensive line done. Offensive line done. We are right in the mix now. And we'll be back very soon with even more top 5s and other discussions, etc. But yeah, that's all for now. So in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you soon.